Men are moved by two levers only, fear and self-interest. Napoleon Bonaparte, they tell you hard work guarantees success. They want you to believe if you just grind, put in the hours, and follow the rules, you'll make it. That's a lie whispered by those who benefit from your obedience. They need you to believe the system is fair, that your effort translates directly into reward. They need you to keep turning the gears. The truth is, the world doesn't care how hard you work. It cares about results. It cares about leverage. It cares about who you know and what they're willing to do for you. It's not about playing the game, it's about understanding the rules and rewriting them. Those who achieve true power don't simply outwork everyone else, they outsmart them. They see the angles, the loopholes, the hidden pathways to influence. They understand that perception is reality, and they manipulate it accordingly. They understand that resources are finite, and they fight relentlessly to control them. The myth of meritocracy is a comforting delusion. It allows the powerful to justify their position and the powerless to accept their fate. But behind the facade of fairness lies a brutal truth. Success is often determined not by effort but by opportunity, by access, and by a willingness to do what others won't. This isn't about complaining about the system. It's about recognizing it for what it is and learning to navigate it on your own terms. Stop believing the lie that hard work alone is enough. Start questioning everything. Start looking for the hidden levers of power. Start forging your own path, regardless of the obstacles they put in your way. The truth is buried alive beneath layers of propaganda and social conditioning. Our goal is to exhume it. The human mind is a battleground, constantly bombarded with information, misinformation, and carefully crafted narratives designed to shape your thoughts and behavior. To truly understand the world, you must first understand how your own mind can be manipulated. Consider the concept of cognitive biases. These are inherent flaws in our thinking, mental shortcuts that lead to irrational decisions. Confirmation bias, for example, makes us seek out information that confirms our existing beliefs, even if that information is false or incomplete. This creates an echo chamber, reinforcing our prejudices and preventing us from seeing the full picture. The availability heuristic leads us to overestimate the importance of information that is easily accessible, such as vivid news stories, even if that information is statistically insignificant. This can distort our perception of risk and lead us to irrational fears. Anchoring bias causes us to rely too heavily on the first piece of information we receive, even if it's irrelevant, when making decisions. This can be exploited by marketers and negotiators who strategically present an initial offer to influence our perception of value. These biases are not random errors. They are systematic patterns of thought that can be predicted and exploited. Those in power understand these biases intimately and use them to control the narrative, shape public opinion, and maintain their dominance. They know that by appealing to your emotions, by exploiting your fears and desires, they can bypass your rational mind and implant ideas directly into your subconscious. They use propaganda, advertising, and social media to create a constant stream of messages designed to reinforce their agenda. They create a climate of fear and uncertainty, making you more susceptible to their influence. They offer simple solutions to complex problems, knowing that people crave certainty in an uncertain world. The key to resisting this manipulation is to become aware of your own cognitive biases. Learn to recognize the patterns of thought that lead you astray. Question your assumptions. Seek out diverse perspectives. Challenge your own beliefs. Don't be afraid to admit that you're wrong. Cultivate a healthy skepticism. Be wary of anyone who tries to tell you what to think. Learn to think for yourself. Developing critical thinking skills is not just an intellectual exercise. It's a form of self-defense. It's the ability to analyze information objectively, identify logical fallacies, and form your own conclusions based on evidence, not emotion. It's the ability to see through the lies and propaganda that are constantly being thrown at you. It's the ability to resist the pressure to conform and think independently. It's the ability to see the world as it really is, not as they want you to see it. The truth is not always easy to find. It's often hidden beneath layers of deception and misinformation, but it's always there, waiting to be discovered. The path to truth requires courage, persistence, and a willingness to challenge the status quo. It requires a willingness to question everything, even your own beliefs. It requires a commitment to intellectual honesty. The rewards for those who seek the truth are immense. They gain a deeper understanding of themselves, the world, and their place in it. They become more resilient, more adaptable, and more capable of navigating the complexities of life. They become free from the shackles of ignorance and manipulation. They become masters of their own minds. The journey to truth is not for the faint of heart. It's a difficult and often painful process. But it's the only path to true freedom. It's the only path to true power. Consider the corporate climber, a man named David. He is affable, always ready with a smile, a compliment and agreement. He embodies the team player, the guy who never rocks the boat. David understands the unspoken rules of the game, the delicate dance of power and perception that governs corporate life. He knows that success in this arena is not solely about competence or innovation. It's about navigating the intricate web of relationships, alliances, and rivalries. He is careful to cultivate relationships with those in positions of power, subtly aligning himself with their interests and echoing their opinions. He avoids confrontation, preferring to smooth over disagreements and maintain a facade of harmony. He understands that dissent, even when well-intentioned, can be perceived as a threat to the established order. David's rise through the ranks is steady, predictable. He is seen as reliable, agreeable, and loyal. He attends all the right social events, makes all the right connections, and says all the right things. He is the model employee, the embodiment of corporate values. But beneath this carefully constructed facade lies a ruthless ambition, a hunger for power that knows no bounds. David is a master of manipulation, a puppeteer pulling strings from behind the scenes. He understands the weaknesses of others, their insecurities, their desires, and he uses this knowledge to his advantage. He sows seeds of doubt and discord, subtly undermining his rivals and positioning himself as the indispensable man. He takes credit for the ideas of others, skillfully presenting them as his own. He deflects blame, always finding a scapegoat to bear the consequences of his mistakes. David understands that in the corporate world, perception is reality. He cultivates an image of competence and leadership, even when his actual skills are lacking. He surrounds himself with loyal subordinates who will sing his praises and protect him from criticism. He is a master of self-promotion, constantly highlighting his accomplishments and downplaying his failures. His colleagues, blinded by his charm and his apparent sincerity, are oblivious to his true nature. They see him as a friend, a mentor, a trusted ally. They are unaware that they are merely pawns in his game. As David ascends the corporate ladder, he leaves a trail of broken careers and shattered dreams in his wake. He has no qualms about sacrificing others for his own advancement. He sees them as obstacles to be overcome, not as human beings with their own aspirations and desires. He is driven by a single-minded focus on his own success, and he will stop at nothing to achieve his goals. David's story is not unique. It is a common tale in the ruthless world of corporate ambition. It is a story of deception, manipulation, and the relentless pursuit of power. It is a reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and that the most dangerous enemies are often those who appear to be our friends. It highlights the importance of critical thinking, of questioning everything, and of seeing through the lies that are constantly being told to us. It demonstrates the brutal reality that sometimes the most successful individuals are not the most talented or the most ethical, but the most cunning and the most ruthless. The Davids of the world, the charismatic climbers, succeed because the weak are fundamentally trapped by their own desire for comfort and validation. They crave a simple world, one where those in positions of authority are inherently competent and benevolent. They desperately want to believe that success is a direct result of hard work and integrity, a meritocratic ideal that rarely exists in its purest form. This belief system blinds them to the reality of power dynamics, the manipulative tactics employed by those who seek to control, and the uncomfortable truth that sometimes the most successful are also the most ruthless. Their naivete stems from a deep-seated fear of conflict and confrontation. They avoid challenging authority, even when they suspect wrongdoing, because they prioritize social harmony and personal comfort above all else. They are afraid of being ostracized, of being labeled as troublemakers, of disrupting the status quo that, despite its flaws, provides them with a sense of security. This fear paralyzes them, preventing them from acting on their instincts and speaking truth to power. They become passive observers, complicit in the injustices that they silently condemn. They are the silent majority, the enablers of the Davids who thrive in environments of unchallenged authority and uncritical acceptance. Furthermore, the weak are easily swayed by emotional appeals and superficial charm. They are drawn to individuals who exude confidence and project an image of competence, even if that image is carefully constructed and deliberately misleading. They are susceptible to flattery and praise, eager to believe in the narratives that reinforce their own self-image. They fail to recognize the subtle cues of manipulation, the carefully crafted smiles, the calculated displays of empathy, the subtle shifts in language designed to elicit a desired response. They are like moths drawn to a flame, captivated by the allure of a charismatic leader, only to be burned by their own misplaced trust. This susceptibility to manipulation is further compounded by their lack of self-awareness. They are often unaware of their own biases and vulnerabilities, their subconscious desires and fears that can be exploited by skilled manipulators. They fail to critically examine their own beliefs and assumptions, instead relying on prepackaged narratives and conventional wisdom. They are easily led astray by misinformation and propaganda, unable to distinguish between truth and falsehood. They are trapped in echo chambers of their own making, surrounded by individuals who reinforce their existing beliefs and shield them from dissenting opinions. This lack of self-awareness makes them easy targets for those who seek to exploit their weaknesses and control their thoughts and actions. The final trap that ensnares the weak is their aversion to risk. They prioritize security and stability above all else, avoiding any action that might jeopardize their comfort or threaten their position. They are reluctant to challenge the status quo, to take initiative, or to pursue opportunities that require them to step outside their comfort zone. They are content to remain in their safe and predictable routines, even if those routines are unfulfilling and ultimately detrimental to their personal and professional growth. This aversion to risk makes them vulnerable to exploitation. They are easily controlled by those who offer them a false sense of security, promising stability and protection in exchange for their compliance and obedience. They are willing to sacrifice their own autonomy and independence for the illusion of safety, becoming pawns in the games of those who are willing to take risks and seize opportunities. The weak fail because they choose comfort over truth, validation over self-awareness, and security over freedom. They are trapped by their own fears and desires, unable to break free from the chains that bind them. They are the silent victims of the Davids, the casualties of a ruthless game played by those who understand the true nature of power. To truly understand the nature of power, one must adopt a Machiavellian approach, shedding all moral constraints and embracing the art of manipulation. The world is not a fair place. It is a battleground where the strong prey on the weak, and only the cunning survive. To navigate this treacherous landscape, you must learn to exploit the weaknesses of others, using their vulnerabilities against them to achieve your own ends. This is not a game for the faint of heart. It requires a ruthless pragmatism, a willingness to do whatever it takes to succeed, regardless of the consequences. The first step is to understand the psychology of the masses. People are driven by emotions, not logic. They are easily swayed by appeals to their fears, their desires, and their prejudices. To control them, you must master the art of manipulation, learning to craft narratives that resonate with their deepest instincts. Use propaganda to shape their beliefs, to control their perceptions, and to incite them to action. The The truth is irrelevant. What matters is what people believe to be true. Create an enemy, a scapegoat to blame for all their problems. Unite them against a common foe and they will become your loyal followers. Promise them security, stability, and prosperity. Appeal to their vanity, their greed, and their desire for recognition. Use flattery and praise to win their trust, and then exploit that trust to achieve your own goals. Never underestimate the power of deception. People are inherently trusting, and they are easily fooled by those who appear to be honest and sincere. Learn to wear a mask, to conceal your true intentions behind a facade of virtue and integrity. Use lies and half-truths to manipulate situations to your advantage. Create confusion and uncertainty, sowing discord and distrust among your enemies. The more chaos you create, the easier it will be to control the outcome. Always be prepared to betray your allies. Loyalty is a weakness, a sentiment that has no place in the ruthless world of power politics. Use your allies to achieve your immediate goals, and then discard them when they have outlived their usefulness. Never hesitate to sacrifice them if it serves your own interests. The ends justify the means. Power is the ultimate goal, and any action, no matter how ruthless or immoral, is justified if it leads to its attainment. Exploit the weaknesses of your rivals. Identify their insecurities, their fears, and their vulnerabilities, and then use that knowledge to undermine their power. Publicly humiliate them, exposing their flaws and weaknesses to the world. Spread rumors and gossip to damage their reputation. Isolate them from their allies, turning them against each other. The more isolated and vulnerable they become, the easier it will be to destroy them. Always maintain the appearance of strength. Project an image of confidence, competence, and invincibility. Never show weakness, never admit mistakes, and never apologize for your actions. People are attracted to strength and they are repelled by weakness. The more powerful you appear, the more likely they are to follow you. Control the flow of information. Censor dissenting voices and suppress any information that might threaten your power. Create a narrative that supports your agenda, and then relentlessly promote that narrative through all available channels. The more people hear the same message, the more likely they are to believe it. Reward loyalty and punish dissent. Make it clear that those who support you will be rewarded handsomely, while those who oppose you will face dire consequences. Create a climate of fear and intimidation, where people are afraid to speak out against you. The more fear you inspire, the more control you will have. Always be prepared to use force. Violence is a last resort, but it is sometimes necessary to maintain power. Suppress any rebellions or uprisings with swift and brutal force, making an example of those who dare to challenge your authority. The more decisive and ruthless you are, the less likely others will be to resist. Understand that power is a constant struggle. It is not something that you can attain once and then rest on your laurels. You must constantly be vigilant, constantly defending your position against those who seek to undermine you. Be prepared to fight for your power, to scheme, to manipulate, and to betray. Only the ruthless and the cunning will survive. The Machiavellian approach is not for everyone. It requires a certain type of personality, a willingness to abandon all moral constraints and to embrace the dark side of human nature. But for those who are willing to pay the price, it offers the key to unlocking true power. The world is a chessboard and the people are pawns. Learn to play the game and you can become the master of your own destiny. Remember that empathy is a weakness. Compassion is a liability. See people as tools, exploit their desires, profit from their weaknesses. Power is not about being liked. It is about being obeyed. Never relinquish control. The truth about power is often buried alive, not just by individuals, but by entire societies and empires. Look at the Roman Empire, a civilization built on conquest, slavery, and brutal political maneuvering. They presented themselves as bringers of order and civilization, but the reality was far more sinister. Beneath the veneer of magnificent architecture and sophisticated law lay a foundation of exploitation and violence. The average Roman citizen, particularly those outside the elite, lived a life of hardship, subject to the whims of a powerful few. The empire's expansion was fueled by the relentless pursuit of resources and power, achieved through the subjugation and exploitation of countless peoples. Their official narrative spoke of spreading Roman law and culture, but the truth was about consolidating power and enriching themselves at the expense of others. The Senate, supposedly a bastion of republican ideals, was often a breeding ground for corruption, backstabbing, and ruthless ambition. Powerful senators routinely used their influence to enrich themselves, manipulate elections, and silence their opponents. The emperor, theoretically the servant of the people, often ruled as an autocrat, wielding absolute power and suppressing any dissent. This hypocrisy was not accidental. It was a deliberate strategy to maintain control. By promoting a carefully crafted image of virtue and strength, the Romans were able to mask the darker aspects of their rule and maintain the loyalty of their subjects. They understood that perception is reality, and that controlling the narrative is essential for maintaining power. The same principle applies to warfare. Every war is presented as a righteous struggle for a noble cause, whether it's defending freedom, protecting national interests, or liberating oppressed peoples. But the reality of war is always far more brutal and complex. War is about violence, death, and destruction. It is about inflicting pain and suffering on your enemies. It is about achieving your objectives through force, regardless of the cost. Leaders often use propaganda to demonize the enemy, portraying them as evil and inhuman, justifying the violence and atrocities committed in the name of war. They appeal to people's emotions, stoking fear, anger, and hatred to rally support for the war effort. The truth about war is often the first casualty. Governments routinely censor news, suppress dissent, and manipulate public opinion to maintain support for their military campaigns. They present a sanitized version of reality, hiding the true cost of war in terms of human lives, economic devastation, and social disruption. Soldiers are often glorified as heroes, while the victims of war are forgotten or ignored. The long-term consequences of war, such as the psychological trauma suffered by veterans and the environmental damage caused by military operations, are often downplayed or ignored. The political motivations behind war are often obscured, with leaders presenting their actions as selfless and altruistic, while concealing their true motives, which may be driven by greed, ambition, or the desire for power. Think about the justifications used to invade Iraq. The official narrative was about disarming Saddam Hussein of weapons of mass destruction and liberating the Iraqi people from his tyrannical rule. But the reality was far more complex, involving geopolitical strategy, control of oil resources, and the pursuit of American interests in the Middle East. The consequences of the invasion were devastating, leading to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Iraqis, the destabilization of the region, and the rise of extremist groups. The truth about the Iraq War is still being debated and contested, but one thing is clear. The official narrative presented by the Bush administration was a far cry from the reality on the ground. The powerful will always attempt to bury the truth, because the truth is a threat to their power. The truth can expose their lies, their hypocrisy, and their corruption. The truth can empower the people and inspire them to resist. That is why it is so important to seek out the truth, to question authority, and to challenge the official narrative. The truth may be buried alive, but it can never be completely extinguished. It will always find a way to resurface, to expose the darkness, and to illuminate the path towards a more just and equitable world. The powerful understand this, and they will do everything in their power to keep the truth hidden. But we must never give up the fight. We must continue to dig, to probe, and to expose the truth, no matter how painful or uncomfortable it may be. For the truth is the only weapon that can truly liberate us. The empires of the past have crumbled, not just from external forces, but from the internal rot of lies and deception. When the truth is suppressed for too long, the foundations of power begin to crack, and eventually the whole edifice collapses. The lesson is clear. Honesty, transparency, and accountability are not just moral virtues, they are essential for long-term stability and success. A society built on lies is a society destined to fail. This applies to individuals as well. A life built on deceit and manipulation may bring short-term gains, but it will ultimately lead to isolation, distrust, and ruin. True power comes from integrity, from living in accordance with your values, and from speaking the truth, even when it is difficult or unpopular. The world is full of illusions, carefully constructed to deceive and control us. The only way to break free from these illusions is to seek out the truth, to cultivate critical thinking, and to develop the courage to question everything. The truth is a powerful force, and it is our duty to protect it. The psychology of buried truth is a battlefield waged within the human mind, a constant struggle between what we know to be real and what we are conditioned to believe. This internal conflict manifests in various ways, often leading to cognitive dissonance, a state of mental discomfort arising from holding conflicting beliefs, values, or attitudes. To alleviate this discomfort, individuals may unconsciously suppress or distort information that challenges their existing worldview, reinforcing the lies they have been told. This self-deception becomes a psychological survival mechanism, a way to protect oneself from the harsh realities of the world and the potential consequences of knowing too much. But this comes at a cost, a fragmentation of the self, a disconnect from reality, and an inability to make sound judgments. The more deeply buried the truth, the more profound the psychological damage. The human mind is remarkably adept at compartmentalizing information, creating separate mental spaces for conflicting beliefs. This allows individuals to function in society while simultaneously harboring hidden knowledge that contradicts the accepted narrative. This compartmentalization can lead to a state of cognitive dissonance, where individuals experience mental discomfort due to the conflicting beliefs they hold. The mind will then seek to reduce this discomfort through various defense mechanisms, such as rationalization, denial, and selective attention, manipulating perceptions to fit the existing worldview. This manipulation of reality is a form of self-preservation, but it also perpetuates the cycle of deception. The more we protect ourselves from the truth, the more entrenched the lies become, and the more difficult it becomes to break free. The powerful exploit this psychological vulnerability, using propaganda, misinformation, and social pressure to manipulate public opinion and maintain control. They understand that the human mind is susceptible to suggestion, and they use this knowledge to shape perceptions and control behavior. By carefully crafting narratives that appeal to our emotions and biases, they can effectively bury the truth beneath layers of deception. This manipulation is not always overt, and it often operates at a subconscious level, subtly influencing our thoughts, feelings, and actions. The constant bombardment of misinformation can create a state of learned helplessness, where individuals feel powerless to challenge the established order. The truth is buried beneath so many layers of lies that it seems impossible to uncover. This sense of futility can lead to apathy and resignation, making it even easier for the powerful to maintain their grip on power. However, the human spirit is resilient, and even in the darkest of times, there are those who refuse to be silenced. These individuals, driven by a deep sense of justice and a commitment to truth, are willing to risk everything to expose the lies and awaken others from their slumber. They are the truth seekers, the whistleblowers, the revolutionaries, and they play a vital role in holding power accountable and paving the way for a more just and equitable world. Their courage serves as an inspiration to others, reminding us that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the truth can prevail. The battle for truth is a battle for the mind, a struggle to break free from the chains of deception and reclaim our ability to think critically and independently. It requires a willingness to confront uncomfortable realities, to challenge established narratives, and to question everything we have been taught. It also requires a deep understanding of the psychological mechanisms that allow us to be manipulated. By recognizing our own vulnerabilities, we can better protect ourselves from the influence of propaganda and misinformation. The path to truth is not always easy, and it is often fraught with peril. but it is a path that we must all take if we are to build a more just and sustainable future. For the truth is the foundation upon which all true progress is built. Lies, on the other hand, are a house of cards, destined to crumble under the weight of reality. The psychology of those who bury the truth is often rooted in a deep-seated fear of losing power and control. They believe that the truth is a threat to their authority, and they will do anything to suppress it. This fear can manifest in various ways, from outright denial and censorship to more subtle forms of manipulation and disinformation. They may use propaganda to demonize those who challenge their authority, or they may employ legal tactics to silence dissent. The goal is always the same: to maintain control by controlling the narrative. The act of burying the truth can also be a form of self-preservation for those in power. They may be aware of their own wrongdoing, and they fear the consequences of exposure. By suppressing the truth, they can protect themselves from accountability and maintain their privileged position. This is why corruption is so often accompanied by secrecy and cover-ups. The more corrupt the system, the more desperate the attempts to conceal the truth. The pursuit of truth requires courage, resilience, and a willingness to challenge the status quo. It also requires a strong sense of empathy, as the truth often involves confronting the suffering of others. The truth can be painful, both for those who speak it and for those who hear it, but it is a necessary pain, as it is the only way to heal the wounds of the past and build a better future. To understand the psychology of why truth is buried, we also have to consider the comfort of illusion. For many, the truth is too difficult to bear. They cling to comforting lies, even when those lies are demonstrably false. This is because the truth can shatter their worldview, forcing them to confront uncomfortable realities about themselves and the world around them. It is easier to live in a world of illusions than to face the harsh realities of life. The powerful understand this, and they exploit it to maintain their control. They create narratives that appeal to our desire for comfort and security, even when those narratives are based on lies. They offer simple solutions to complex problems, and they promise a brighter future, even when they know that those promises are empty. By appealing to our emotions and desires, they can effectively bypass our critical thinking and manipulate our behavior. Therefore, understanding human desire for comfort is key to comprehending why uncomfortable truths remain buried. Consider the story of Dr. Ignaz Semmelweis, a 19th century physician who dared to challenge the prevailing medical dogma of his time. Semmelweis, working in the maternity ward of a Vienna hospital, observed a stark difference in mortality rates between two clinics. In the first clinic, where doctors and medical students frequently performed autopsies before examining patients, the death rate from puerperal fever, also known as childbed fever, was alarmingly high. In the second clinic, where midwives were primarily responsible for patient care and autopsies were less common, the mortality rate was significantly lower. Semmelweis, a meticulous observer and a man driven by a relentless pursuit of truth, began to investigate. He theorized that doctors and students, carrying unseen, cadaverous particles from the autopsy room on their hands, were infecting the women during childbirth. To test his hypothesis, Semmelweis instituted a policy requiring doctors and students to wash their hands with a chlorinated lime solution before examining patients. The results were astounding. The mortality rate in the first clinic plummeted, dropping to levels comparable to the second clinic. Semmelweis had found the answer, a simple yet revolutionary solution that could save countless lives. But instead of being celebrated as a hero, Semmelweis was met with resistance, ridicule, and ultimately, ostracism from the medical community. His ideas challenged the established beliefs and practices of the time, threatening the authority and reputation of prominent physicians. The medical establishment, steeped in tradition and resistant to change, refused to accept Semmelweis' findings. They dismissed his evidence as anecdotal, questioned his methodology, and attacked his character. Semmelweis, a man of science and reason, found himself battling against a wall of entrenched ignorance and professional jealousy. He became increasingly frustrated and isolated, his mental health deteriorating under the strain of constant rejection. He wrote passionate letters to medical societies, pleading with them to adopt his hand-washing protocols, but his pleas fell on deaf ears. Eventually, Semmelweis suffered a mental breakdown and was committed to an asylum, where he died a few years later, likely from a beating inflicted by guards. The tragedy of Ignaz Semmelweis is a stark reminder of the price that can be paid for speaking truth to power. His story illustrates the profound resistance that can arise when established beliefs are challenged, even when the evidence is overwhelming. It also highlights the importance of intellectual humility and the need to be open to new ideas, even when they contradict our own deeply held convictions. Semmelweis' truth, though initially rejected, ultimately prevailed. Years after his death, his hand-washing protocols were adopted by the medical community, saving countless lives and revolutionizing the practice of medicine. His story serves as a testament to the enduring power of truth, even when it is buried alive by ignorance and resistance. The fate of Semmelweis underscores a darker aspect of human nature, the active suppression of inconvenient truths that threaten the status quo. This suppression often manifests not as a deliberate conspiracy, but as a collective, subconscious effort to protect existing power structures and maintain a comfortable illusion of order. The medical community of Semmelweis' time, invested in their established practices and their own self-importance, found it easier to discredit him than to admit they had been contributing to the deaths of their patients. Accepting Semmelweis' findings would have required them to acknowledge their own culpability and to fundamentally change their behavior, a prospect they found deeply unsettling. This illustrates a broader principle. The more deeply entrenched a falsehood is within a system, the more vigorously it will be defended, regardless of the evidence to the contrary. The trap that ensnares the weak lies in their desperate need for validation. They seek it not from within, from a solid understanding of reality and their place in it, but from the approval of others. This external validation becomes their compass, guiding their actions and shaping their beliefs. They cling to popular opinions, not because they have critically examined them and found them to be true, but because doing so earns them acceptance and avoids the discomfort of being ostracized. The fear of standing alone, of being different, of challenging the accepted narrative, paralyses them. They become echoes of the dominant voices, repeating platitudes and regurgitating information without ever questioning its validity. This dependence on external validation makes them vulnerable to manipulation. They are easily swayed by charismatic leaders, by emotional appeals, and by the promise of belonging. They prioritize fitting in over standing for what is right, and in doing so, they sacrifice their integrity and their ability to think for themselves. This is how falsehoods persist and thrive. When individuals prioritize social acceptance over truth, they become complicit in the perpetuation of lies. They may not actively promote the lies, but their silence and their conformity allow them to spread unchecked. The weak are not necessarily malicious, but their weakness makes them instruments of deception. Their need for validation outweighs their commitment to truth, and this flaw is exploited by those who seek to control them. True strength lies in the ability to stand alone, to challenge conventional wisdom, and to defend unpopular truths. It requires a deep sense of self-worth that is not contingent on the approval of others. It requires the courage to face criticism and rejection without compromising one's principles. The weak, however, are incapable of such strength. They are too afraid of the consequences, too dependent on the comfort of the crowd, and so they remain trapped, victims of their own insecurities, perpetuating the very lies that keep them enslaved. Another aspect of this trap is the inherent bias towards simplicity and immediate gratification. Complex truths require effort to understand and often demand delayed rewards. The weak, however, are drawn to simple solutions and quick fixes. They prefer easy answers to difficult questions, and they are easily seduced by promises of instant success. This makes them susceptible to scams, to unrealistic promises, and to simplistic ideologies that offer easy answers to complex problems. They are unwilling to invest the time and energy required to develop a nuanced understanding of the world, and as a result, they remain perpetually ignorant. This ignorance is not simply a lack of knowledge, it is an active resistance to knowledge that challenges their comfortable worldview. They cling to their illusions, even when confronted with evidence to the contrary, because those illusions provide them with a sense of security and control. The truth, in contrast, can be unsettling and disruptive. It can force them to confront their own shortcomings and to acknowledge the complexity of the world. The weak avoid this confrontation at all costs, preferring to remain in their state of blissful ignorance. Furthermore, the weak often lack the critical thinking skills necessary to discern truth from falsehood. They are easily misled by logical fallacies, by emotional manipulation, and by biased sources of information. They lack the ability to evaluate evidence objectively and to identify flaws in arguments. This deficiency is often compounded by a lack of intellectual curiosity. They are not driven by a desire to learn and to understand the world, but rather by a desire to confirm their existing beliefs. They seek out information that supports their preconceived notions, and they ignore or dismiss information that contradicts them. This confirmation bias reinforces their ignorance and makes them even more vulnerable to manipulation. They become trapped in a self-reinforcing cycle of ignorance and confirmation, unable to escape the confines of their own limited perspective. The final component of this trap is a deep-seated fear of failure. The weak are so afraid of making mistakes that they avoid taking risks and challenging themselves. They prefer the safety of the familiar to the uncertainty of the unknown. This fear of failure prevents them from growing and developing their potential. They remain stuck in their comfort zones, never pushing themselves to achieve more or to learn new things. This stagnation ultimately leads to a sense of frustration and resentment. They see others succeeding and achieving their goals, but they feel powerless to do the same. They blame external factors for their failures, rather than taking responsibility for their own choices. This victim mentality further reinforces their weakness and perpetuates their sense of helplessness. They become trapped in a cycle of self-pity and inaction, unable to break free from the limitations they have imposed upon themselves. The inability to confront hard truths is a cornerstone of weakness. The world operates on principles that often clash with comforting narratives. Nature is indifferent, competition is fierce, and success demands sacrifice. The weak, however, recoil from these realities. They prefer narratives that emphasize fairness, equality, and ease. They seek out environments where discomfort is minimized and where everyone is rewarded regardless of their effort or contribution. This avoidance of harsh truths leaves them unprepared for the challenges of the real world. They are easily overwhelmed by setbacks, and they crumble under pressure. Their lack of resilience makes them vulnerable to exploitation. They are easily manipulated by those who understand the true nature of the world and who are willing to exploit their naivete. The acceptance of uncomfortable truth is not merely a matter of intellectual honesty. It is the bedrock of personal power. It's the understanding that the world owes you nothing, that success is earned through relentless effort and strategic action, and that failure is often the most valuable teacher. This understanding allows you to navigate the complexities of life with clarity and purpose. The weak, by contrast, cling to illusions that shield them from the harsh realities of existence. They convince themselves that they are entitled to success, that the world should be fair, and that effort is unnecessary. These beliefs leave them vulnerable to disappointment and disillusionment. When reality inevitably clashes with their idealized expectations, they are left feeling betrayed and powerless. They lack the mental fortitude to cope with setbacks and the strategic insight to adapt to changing circumstances. The ability to see the world as it is, not as you wish it to be, is a superpower. It allows you to anticipate challenges, identify opportunities, and make informed decisions. It enables you to build resilience in the face of adversity and to persevere in the pursuit of your goals. The weak, blinded by their illusions, stumble through life, constantly surprised and overwhelmed by the unpredictable nature of reality. They are like ships without rudders, tossed about by the currents of fate, with no control over their destination. This self-deception is a form of self-sabotage. By refusing to acknowledge the truth, the weak deny themselves the opportunity to learn, grow, and adapt. They remain trapped in a state of perpetual immaturity, unable to take responsibility for their lives or to achieve their full potential. They are prisoners of their own minds, confined by the walls of their self-imposed ignorance. The strong, on the other hand, embrace the truth, no matter how painful or uncomfortable it may be. They understand that reality is a constant teacher and that every challenge is an opportunity for growth. They use their knowledge of the world to their advantage, anticipating obstacles, mitigating risks, and maximizing their chances of success. Their resilience and adaptability make them formidable adversaries and unstoppable forces. They are masters of their own destiny, charting their own course and achieving their own goals. This embrace of reality is not a passive acceptance of fate, it is an active engagement with the world. The strong are not content to simply observe the world around them. They seek to understand it, to shape it, and to master it. They are driven by a desire to improve themselves and to make a positive impact on the world. They are the architects of their own lives and the builders of their own future.